Hi everyone, welcome to SoundSofa. I'm Aiden and this is Luke. This is our new channel where we do album reviews of various genres from a range of different decades, along with a plethora of other random shit. So please join us on this journey and feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And please press the bell so that you can stay notified if we upload any new videos.
Right, this month's topic for review is indie rock. It's quite a diverse genre. It's got a lot of sub-genres as well, meaning a lot of viewers would be a bit familiar with it. There are quite a number of big artists within the indie rock genre. So our conditions were we select an album for each other. We can't have heard it before, meaning I can't have heard Aiden's choice for me, and he couldn't have heard mine for him. So Aiden selected Manchester Orchestra's Black Mount to the Surface, and I selected Mac Demarco's 2. Now, after giving our opinions and our takes on the album, we will decide whether the album is worthy of being placed on our playlist, or if it's just worth a skip. So stick around to the end to find out if it's worth your time, or if you can just ignore it. Yeah. Okay. Right. So
Luke's going to begin with his review on the album that I selected for him, Manchester Orchestra's A Black Mile to the Surface. And these are some general facts about the album which were taken from Wikipedia. A Black Mile to the Surface is the fifth studio album by the American indie rock band Manchester Orchestra. It was released on July 21st, 2017 through Loma Vista Recordings and Favorite Gentleman. The recording for the album took place from the summer of 2016 onwards with the producer Catherine Marks. Inspired by their work on the soundtrack for the 2016 film Swiss Army Man, band members Andy Hull and Robert McDowell set out to create an album that was a reset from the band's previous studio albums Cope and Hope, both from 2014. A Black Mile to the Surface is an alternative rock and Americana record, interweaving a concept album set in South Dakota, mining town, with the reflections of Andy Hull's younger daughter. And commercially it performed well, debuting at number 33 on the US Billboard.
Right, so kicking it off, my favorite song on this album was a bit of a hard pick. I found while I was listening to this album, I thought I'd find my favorite song, my favorite track, then the next track would start playing, and then I'd have to rethink my opinions completely. It sort of went from the gritty tones of the Moth to the sonic highs of the Grocery, and straight to the melancholic plucking of the parts. But in the end, as it currently stands, it may change on a second listen, but at the moment, The Alien, that was my favorite track. Just sort of the narrative that it follows, I found the most compelling. Then my least favorite song on Black Mile to the Surface was The Maze. It's the first, it's the opening, it's the introduction to the album. I found it it was very reminiscent to me of a Hillsong song. I'm not really into, this is me personally, it's like gospel music, and I found it, it's not a gospel song, but it sort of, it had that same sort of feeling to it that I get from those songs. And on top of that, sonically and just the soundscape of the rest of the album, that intro doesn't hold a candle to the rest of it. Yeah. Moving on to our lyrical score, or my lyrical score for this, I give it an 8 out of 10. So we're doing it on a 10 scale. I don't know. We agree to it.
As per normal Earth standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, some people do it out of 5. We'll do it at 10.
Sure, we'll go for 10.
So for me in this album, he displayed a knack for painting vivid imagery through the use of his words. He dealt with topics of grief, like you just briefed, was grief, depression, the sort of the pressure and the weight of bringing life into the world through his newly born daughter. It's something I'd like to revisit upon a second listen, is just delving into the lyrics and all the meaning, because it was trying to take in the lyrics and all the sound at the same time. It wasn't jarring. It was a lot, and I'm not no complaints. I enjoy that when there's like a fullness to the sound. It was very rich. But yeah, the lyrics are definitely for the more invested listeners, something worth going back to, worth investigating. Right. I give this album overall between an 8 and a 9, so I'd say I'll settle on an 8.5. Some general comments. Initially, I felt the vocals, like I've said before, the vocals were a bit preachy for me. It didn't disappoint me, but it set my expectations quite low for the album. And then as it moved to The Gold, the second track on this album, did a complete 180, really flipped it on its head. It's created an expectation for something bigger than the Maze originally, let on. On the topic of production, they've crafted, Manchester Orchestra has crafted something with quite a dynamic range of sound, from droning guitars akin to that of older Coldplay projects. I found something similar to some of the work of Parachutes and X and Y. Like the tracks Talk, there was, I can't remember exactly what track it was, but I found the progression of the song quite similar. And so it went from those extreme highs to the more stripped back instrumentals of parts, which I really, really enjoyed. But at the same time, I didn't find that these huge differences in sound affected the pacing of the album. It wasn't jarring going from one track to the other. It felt natural. So you could tell that they'd planned it out, that there was a lot of thought that went into this. I saw there was a fair amount of people complaining about the overproduction of this album. I didn't find that to be an issue. I didn't think it had been overproduced. I felt that it had been done to just the right extent. So it worked for the album. Another highlight for me, which I found the biggest takeaway from it, was there's a trilogy within the album, or it's not really so much the story as a trilogy as it is the sound. Sort of these three songs share the same melody or the same chord progression, and it's the Alien, the Sunshine, and the Grocery. The seamless blending of those three songs really it elevated this album to a different level for me. So yeah, will it make our playlist? Yes, most definitely it will make the playlist. I'm going to be coming back to this album again and again, trying to dig for new bits that I didn't quite catch the first time, because there is a lot to take in, and I am looking forward to further listenings. So
awesome,
really good album.
Thanks, man.
Cool.
That's interesting, because I have almost the opposite sort of take on the progression of the album. So for me, the Maze sort of eases you into almost a false sense of security. It's like this is just going to be another typical album. And in my mind, that's how I see Andy Hull writing the album, is him coming into this town that he's been writing about. Is at surface level, at face value, what you get is it's just another town in America. It's this, very typical album in this case. And as you get into track 2, which also has a nice, the end of the Maze is the beginning of the second song, The Gold, which is a theme which is quite common through the album, which I really enjoyed. But as soon as the second song comes through, then you're like, oh, okay, this is what is actually happening. This is a different story to what
almost like a facade, sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you said, a false.
And I feel like that's sort of synonymous with what's happening in the town, and the sort of, there's actually a deeper underlying thing that's actually
just
happening.
below the surface.
Exactly. So this is, for me, top 5 albums that I've ever listened to. 100%. It's really up there for me. So I love this album. And what I find amazing is I can put this album on, I can put it on shuffle, and doesn't matter if I listen to the song in order or on shuffle, the songs to me still follow a common thread, and it's just there's this nice knit between all the songs, which is incredible. And I don't find a lot of albums have that. There's this just sort of uniformity, but still each song is so individual, which I really appreciate about this album. So yeah,
definitely. I'm gonna invest more time in it.
So then I have some additional information and interesting facts about this album. So this is quite in depth, so strap in.
I'm gonna sit back and take
I got this information from an interview that I found on YouTube. So it's not it's pretty directly from there. But yeah, I just thought it was such an interesting story that I thought I'd have to include it. So Andy Hull said that he was actually in a really good place when he was writing this album, and he said usually he writes out of trying to cope with difficult situations, and when he was writing this album he didn't have that to write about. Like you said, his daughter was a newly-born daughter, and things were like in a good place and looking up for him. So what he decided to do, and the reason why he wrote about this town, which is called Lead in South Dakota.
Oh, that's what that's another thing I picked. Like all the titles of the songs is the blank, except for that one track, which has got the same feel. It's like that gritty feel as the moth and is it Lead or Lead?
Lead, yeah.
South Dakota have the same sort of vibe.
Yeah. But basically he was trying to write about something completely separated from himself. So he was writing about a town. He wasn't writing about his own experiences.
Okay. So there's a disconnect between...
So there's kind of a disconnect to his usual writing style, which I found quite interesting. And this album for me is the only album that I've ever listened to that actually, when I listen to this album, it takes me to a different place. Whereas like most albums, I put it on, I listen to it, it's great, I enjoy it, it's fantastic. There's many albums out there that are 10 out of 10 albums, but they don't necessarily transport me to a different place. But this album, I feel, I put the headphones on, I listen to this album, and I'm right there. I'm in South Dakota experiencing what he's writing about, which I found just a testament to the writing abilities and the artistry from the band. Another interesting thing is there's many audio drops that he includes in the album, so like small sound recordings and things.
Oh yes, like it's snippets of a girl speaking or like whispers,
So that is, the one for example is his daughter's first recital. So it's his first, and he said he actually took the recording because it was such a terrifying sound, because there were all these little kids like chanting, and he said it was such an eerie feeling that he had to record it and include it in the album, which I thought is just it's a nice thing. And he said what he wanted to do is have these sound drops so that he could specifically incorporate his experience and his family into the album, even though it was separated from his own writing, which I thought it's a nice way of tying that together. And then one of the stories that were going around in the interview, he actually confirmed that he said that he recorded one of his songs in his bathtub while he was lying down in his bath, because the acoustics of his bathroom just were perfect for the song. But in addition to that,
which track was it?
He didn't mention which song, so I'm not sure. Which is actually a challenge. We could go try to figure that out. But he said it gave the best acoustics. But in addition to that, he was actually like completely hungover from a whiskey hangover while recording that song, which is just a nice little tidbit to add. So the narrative is about this small town in South Dakota called Lead, where it was said that there were all these science experiments going on, which is what led Andy to be interested about this town. And so while Andy was in Phoenix, Arizona, he was telling a fan one night about all these places that he was really obsessed with. And specifically, he mentioned Lead, and that he was writing some stuff about it. And this guy that was standing behind the fan, he actually said, my grandfather was born in Lead, South Dakota. And Andy said, that's not possible. This is a town of 10,000 people, so there's no way. And the guy was like, no, really, he's actually having lunch with his grandfather tomorrow. So Andy was like, okay, here's my information, I'll give it to you. And if this is true, let me know. So the next day, that fan got in touch with Andy, and he was like, oh, by the way, my grandfather was actually born in a cave in Lead. In the early 1900s, so it's quite crazy.
What are the chances though that someone were to overhear that conversation?
Exactly.
And be related to the European?
And Andy then asked his grandfather if it would be okay with him if he could just write a little bit about the grandfather's story and how they got to Lead and how they left and sort of just what his story was. So this fan's grandfather actually then wrote Andy a 4-page biography of his childhood and his life to Andy.
Wow. In
this tiny handwriting. So it was like lots and lots and lots of information in. So it was this detailed story, and the grandfather actually told the story about how his father had to move to Oregon to join the timber industry because the gold mine had dried up. And that's also the gold is
I know the black mile is the dirt between the miner and the surface. Yeah,
exactly. So there's all these interesting sort of ties to the story of this grandfather. And he said so his 13-year-old brother had to drive him and his family across the country from South Dakota to Oregon.
Wow.
Which in itself is just incredible. So this album was basically pieced together with things about that man's life and his experience in Lead. But Andy said he also took the perspective of a woman's perspective, of a wife and a mother of these kids, and that the dad is going down into the gold mine every day and it's just kind of tearing them up as a family, and the health concerns from the gold mine and all these things. And Andy said that he found many parallels between his life and that life, in the sense that he had to go on tour quite frequently with the album and the band in general, and how that is causing tension between him and his family, and he just identified many similarities between the two. So that was a nice way of still writing something about his family and bringing it about, even though it's not specifically written from his own viewpoint. It's a completely separated story. So I thought it's just such an interesting way of writing, and I think he just did it brilliantly.
Sounds like his heart and soul into Hollow.
Yeah.
You said it was supposed to be like a reboot, or not a reboot, because they wrote the Hope and Cope.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't flop, but everyone sort of, it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. So following Swiss Army Man, which I didn't know they did the soundtrack for that. That's new to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they did the entire soundtrack, but so that was that. But following it, as you said, this album, they set out to create a reset from the previous album.
Reset, not a reboot.
A reset from Cope and Hope.
Thank you.
So that and this is a concept album, so it's like just a different album. So anyway, so that's the information behind that.
We are now moving on to my choice for Aiden, being Mac Demarco's album 2. It's a bit of an easier listen than Black Mouth to the Surface. It's for those looking to dip their toes into indie rock, those not so familiar, want something light to sort of break into the genre. just a bit of information taken from the web. 2 is the debut full-length studio album by Canadian musician Mac Demarco. It was recorded in June 2012 and released in October of the same year under the Captured Tracks label. It was composed and recorded in his apartment in Montreal in the Mile End neighborhood. Lyrically, he covers growing up in suburbia, failed love and family secrets, which is most apparent in the song Cooking Up Something Good, which Aiden, I'm sure, will cover in a bit. But people have also written that they find his sort of deadpan vocal approach, he doesn't really have much dynamic range, which Aiden will also cover. I feel like I'm going a bit too into detail here.
No, go
but it's grown a lot of people. They find it to be sort of weary. There's wisdom in his words. So Aiden, I think you can take it away with your review.
Perfect. So, straight into it. My favorite song was actually Cooking Up Something Good. It was just such an easy start to the album. Song number 1. I found it fun. It gave like a summery. It just made me think of summer. It was a very summery vibe. Well, I actually wrote there. Strangely enough, I found it to be kind of like. This was going into the general comments of the album, but I'll say it now. I actually found the whole album to give me kind of beach rock.
Yeah.
That like beach rock feel.
It almost sounds like it was recorded on quite like low quality.
Yeah.
Sort of got a very rough finished sort of.
Yeah, but I mean, again, something I was going to comment later, but the settings on the guitar were really fantastic. I think the sound that he managed to get out of the instruments in this album were incredible. Really, people spend years trying to achieve those sounds. So
I'm 90% sure he uses a Stratocaster, just like the old school one.
Yeah, I know. It was really nice, and it was just so nice to listen to, even though it wasn't super complicated. Like musically, it was very straightforward. Just playing some chords, a little bit of the rhythm guitar, and a bit of the lead guitar.
Super basic drums.
Super basic, but it was just enjoyable to listen to. It was very easy to listen to as a whole, which I really enjoyed. My only sort of gripe with my favorite song of the album is if you listen with headphones on.
No, I know the struggle.
The mixing is like really unbalanced at the beginning, which makes it a little bit confusing to listen to. But it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of listening to the song and the rest of the album. But like through speakers as well, it's perfect. It's enjoyable. It's nice.
Yeah, it also bugs me. It feels like this year has received a bit more, than this. And then when I take the earphones off, it's not even. It's in my head. I know it's in my head, but it feels like my hearing has been affected in this year, and it's just.
So that's my only sort of statement about it, is the mixing is a little bit unbalanced. But other than that, it's not a major issue. A close second that I sort of bouncing between that and Cooking Up Something Good was Robson.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that song. It's just nice, easy to listen to. Going back to the sound of the album, strangely enough, I also got Creedence Clearwater Revival.
I can sort of hear that.
Old, I can picture like the Vietnam War radio. Like it's that gritty but like nice guitar. So definitely that sort of feeling got through this album.
That's an interesting take. I haven't actually heard, but I understand it. I get it completely. Makes sense.
Makes sense. Then my least favorite song would have to be Still Together, the last song. Only because the vocal thing that he was doing in that song, it doesn't fit with the album. Like, there's no sort of allusion to any form of experimentally doing something with the vocals or anything. It's very simple, very straightforward, and then the last song he goes like way out with the vocals, which it just doesn't really tie the album together nicely, which I felt is a bit disappointing. But it's still not like a bad song. Like I'll still listen to it, but yeah, it was just
with the mood of the rest of the album.
It was just a weird way to end off the album.
We can just write it off, pretend it doesn't.
Well, yeah, we'll stop it.
It's a bundle. It was released with the.
Yeah. So my lyrical score, I'd have to give it a score of 6. It's not very deep. There's
That's the one thing with Mac is that a lot of there's like, I can probably list 3 songs that have a bit more substantial meaning, but it's on this is lyrically nothing special.
No, it's nothing special, but it's nice. There's a lot of repetition I found throughout the songs, which is nice. It's easy to follow, but again, it's not particularly deep. I don't know if he was trying to specifically like hammer a specific idea by repeating those lines, or if it was just because it's nice and easy to follow and easy to listen to. But I found it pretty simplistic, not in a lot of depth, but again, very enjoyable. The musical score, I originally gave it a score of 7.8 because again, it's the same, it's chords and a bit of lead guitar and simple drums, but I bumped it up to an 8.
Really?
Flat 8.
Wow, okay.
Just because I think the quality of those guitars are truly top tier. So that there's a lot to be said for finding a good sound.
Yeah.
And it really is glued together nicely. The sound and the vocals and everything is really mixed, despite the unbalancing.
Yeah.
It's really glued together nicely. The sound
It almost reminds me of like a Beatles, like
it does,
playing.
Exactly.
It wasn't recorded for stereo so much.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And then just basically my last little general comments is. It's interesting that the first song was my favorite song,
The last one
was my least favorite. So I feel like that kind of is reflective of the overall tone of the album. I felt like it started off great, and then it did increase to a peak, and then it came back down to close off at the last song,
which is a bit unfortunate.
It is, but again, it's still overall, it's a really great album. It's very nice to listen from start to finish. Some albums are not that enjoyable to listen sequentially, whereas this one I could easily I put it on to just let it play through all the songs multiple times, and it was very enjoyable. So my opinion of would I playlist it? Absolutely, it's already on my playlist.
Oh yes, okay.
So yeah, that was a great suggestion.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Now just a few tidbits on my side. Really, there's not a lot of depth to this album. There's not a lot to find on the internet either. So, but some interesting things I can say. Mac has stated that he recorded the entirety of 2 in nothing but his underwear. He was in his skivvies,
nice.
as he put it. The art itself, he said in an interview with What's in My Bag, which is a pretty cool channel on YouTube. They just go to vinyl stores and they'll spot artists, ask them, so what are we picking up today? So the album art for 2, which we can bring onto screen here in post-production, it was inspired by Harumi Hosono's album Hosono House. It's quite evident in the letterhead he's used. The font is almost exactly the same, as well as the coloring. Both artists opted for a black and white portrait of themselves in the album. Another thing I found interesting, most people they love My Kind of Woman, Cooking Up Something Good, but also Ode to Viceroy is also like a pretty common favorite. That song is actually, it's a love ballad to his favorite brand of cigarettes, Viceroy's.
Interesting.
And I like that one. It's not as deep, but also it's fun. It's like he's saying, "Oh, I'll smoke you until I'm dying because it'll give him, cancer inevitably or something like that." But for me, that song sort of fits into his aesthetic. It's gritty, He's not like this. He doesn't play himself up. He's a very normal guy. He enjoys his cigarettes. He enjoys his beer. So yeah, that's episode 1.
Perfect.
So both albums this month playlist worthy. We do recommend you give them a listen. Maybe for those newer to the genre, 2's the way to go. For those a bit more experienced who want something to, really sink their teeth into,
Black Mount to the
surface all the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking to make this our main format for our videos going forward. However, we are looking at potentially doing skits, music-related skits, as well as sort of like game show sort of a series, which we will delve more into depth in future videos. But with that being said, we hope to see your pretty thumbs ups on our videos in future. Please remember to subscribe if you enjoy the content. Leave us a comment, letting us know what you thought, what we can improve on. It's very basic at the moment. It's quite bare bone, but we are working on it. And with that, we'd like to thank you for your time today, and good week further. Thank you.